Welcome the resilient ones. You know how the saying goes, when the big dogs can't get to the bone, they start snapping at each other. That's not just some folksy wisdom. It's a hard truth I've seen play out time and again. Every empire built on shaky ground, every alliance born of hidden agendas eventually crumbles from within. Why? Because the moment their shared target survives, their flimsy unity falls apart. Even studies in psychology confirm it. Bonds built on envy or hate are the weakest of all. And right now, that's precisely what's unfolding in your story. Those who banded together to plot against you are now baring their teeth at each other. Think about it. They've been scheming, whispering, and obsessing over your downfall, pouring their energy into it like a grim, unpaid job. But here's the kicker: fate had other plans. Every sneaky tactic they tried backfired spectacularly. Unable to touch you, the only target left is each other. Talk about irony. This isn't just karma. It's a carefully orchestrated strategy from above. It wasn't just about shielding you. It was about cornering them, forcing them to reveal their true nature. Your resilience shines a light on their failures, and let me tell you, failure has a knack for breeding suspicion. Now their so-called unity is cracking under the pressure. One is accusing the other of being careless, another is blaming someone for blabbing. That perfect circle they drew to trap you has become a cage from which they can't escape. So get ready, because we're not just talking about dealing with enemies. We're about to witness the spectacular implosion of alliances that were never real to begin with. You're going to see their forced laughter turn into bitter arguments. Their quiet whispers escalate into shouting matches. And the very thing they built to destroy you becomes the instrument of their own destruction. And honestly, watching those who once plotted your demise turn on each other, it's not just justice, it's darkly hilarious. First, their bond was built on a shared target, not genuine connection. Their unity was a mirage, a fragile alliance held together by one thing: their collective dislike of you. People like that rarely genuinely like each other. They just needed a common enemy to keep their charade going. You were the glue, the distraction, the excuse for them to tolerate one another. But as soon as fate intervened and left them powerless against you, the glue dissolved, revealing the ugly truth. They were never truly united, just temporarily aligned. And that's the secret about bonds built on negativity: they're not sustainable. Hatred might bring people to the same table, but it won't keep them there when the feast is over. All they had in common was the thrill of thinking they could bring you down. Now that the thrill is gone, so is their false sense of loyalty. All that remains is their true nature: jealousy, envy, mistrust, and ego. They used to hide those flaws by pointing at you, but since they can't touch you, they're forced to turn those weapons on each other. This is why their downfall is inevitable. Without a target, those who thrive on destruction will turn on themselves. They'll start to nitpick, accuse, and second-guess each other because the energy that once propelled them forward has nowhere else to go. They're realizing that their so-called bond was just a mask for their own insecurities. Your untouchability forces them to see each other as they truly are. And the truth is, they were enemies to each other long before they tried to be enemies to you. What makes it even more devastating is that their attempt to unite against you only delayed the inevitable conflict between them. By shielding you, fate sped up their collapse. The protection over your life acted like a mirror reflecting their own weakness back at them. And since they can't handle that reflection, they attack each other instead. They thought their numbers made them strong, but all they had was borrowed time. Numbers without loyalty are just noise, and noise eventually fades. The fact that they're now devouring each other proves that their unity was never genuine. It wasn't love, respect, or loyalty. It was desperation, and desperation loses its power when the target survives. Second, their inner demons are battling for control. Every alliance built on negativity has a hidden power dynamic, even if no one admits it. The whole time they were plotting against you, there was always someone who secretly wanted to be the leader, the mastermind, the one pulling the strings. As long as they were united against you, that power struggle remained hidden. But now that they can't touch you, their focus has shifted inward. Instead of directing their energy at you, they're turning on each other, each one vying to prove they're the one in charge. Here's the thing about negativity, it's never satisfied. Those who come together for wicked purposes don't just want the plan to succeed. They also want the credit, the recognition, the feeling of superiority. But since their schemes against you keep failing, they have no victory to claim. And when there's no victory, the hunger for dominance intensifies. Suddenly, the alliance becomes a competition, with everyone scrambling for a crown that doesn't even exist. What you're witnessing is pride colliding with pride. Their egos won't allow them to admit defeat, so instead they start accusing each other. It was your fault the plan failed, one will say. You didn't do your part, another will insist. Someone else will try to seize control of the narrative just to look stronger than the rest. What used to be a group effort now looks like a battlefield where each one is trying to outshine the other. And because none of them are humble enough to back down, the fight never ends. The irony is that they once thought they were powerful because they were united. But the truth is, their unity was only possible as long as you were their target. Now that fate has made you untouchable, their egos have nothing to hide behind. All the envy, jealousy, and rivalry they kept suppressed are spilling out into the open. They can't stand to see each other as equals because in their minds, one of them must always be superior. So their inner demons are now clashing for dominance. Each one wants the invisible throne of negativity, but none of them are fit to sit on it. And the result is chaos, infighting, betrayal, and division that weakens them by the day. They set out to dethrone you, but all they did was expose the war within themselves. Third, your protection exposed their powerlessness. Your protection didn't just save you, it humiliated them. There's nothing more deflating to those who thrive on control than watching their carefully crafted attacks fall apart in real time. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought their strategies were foolproof. But when fate blocked every single one of their moves, the message was clear: they are powerless. And powerlessness is the one thing they can't accept. This is where the shift happens. Those who are used to bullying or manipulating others only feel strong when their efforts succeed. The moment they meet unbreakable resistance, their confidence crumbles. That crack becomes a wound, And that wound turns into rage not at themselves for being wrong, but at each other for messing up. Instead of accepting their powerlessness against you, they start pointing fingers, accusing and tearing each other down to avoid facing the shame of failure. The irony is that what was supposed to unite them, bringing you down, has now exposed how fragile they truly are. They didn't come together out of love, respect, or loyalty. They came together out of greed, envy, and spite. And those foundations crumble when plans fail. So the humiliation of being unable to touch you isn't just personal, it's contagious. Everyone in that circle now feels the weight of being useless, and that weight breeds suspicion. If the plan didn't work, then someone must have talked too much. If nothing's working, then maybe one of them is sabotaging the rest. The failure becomes fuel for paranoia, and once paranoia sets in, the group begins to collapse from within. The very shield that protected you has now become the dividing line between them. You stand untouched, and that untouched state reminds them daily that they are not as powerful as they pretended to be. What they thought was dominance has been revealed as impotence. What they believed was cleverness has been exposed as foolishness, and nothing bruises pride more than being constantly reminded that you couldn't be touched. So your protection wasn't just safety. It was a divine humiliation for them. It forced them to confront a truth they never wanted to face: they are powerless. And when predators taste failure, they stop hunting together and start devouring each other. Fourth, their mask of unity was a performance. Their mask of unity was just that, a mask. And like every performance, it had to end when the spotlight of truth hit the stage. They presented themselves as family, friends, a strong, unshakable team. But beneath the surface, it was always fragile. Their bond was rehearsed, their laughter scripted, and their loyalty as thin as paper. They weren't bound together by love or trust. They were bound together by pretense. The moment fate refused to let you fall, that stage collapsed, and the actors were forced to reveal who they really are. The truth is, those who need to put on a show of unity are rarely unified. True bonds don't require performance. They don't need constant validation, nor do they need an enemy to give them purpose. What held them together wasn't authentic connection, but shared deceit. They only stood side by side because it was convenient, because the illusion of unity made them feel stronger than they truly were. When fate stepped in and blocked their schemes, the illusion shattered. Suddenly, the costumes came off, and everyone watching could see the cracks they had worked so hard to cover. What's even more telling is how quickly the act fell apart once they failed. A real family or real friends can weather setbacks and losses, but an alliance built on lies has no resilience. The first storm destroys it, and that's exactly what's happening. The refusal of fate to let their scheme succeed exposed the lack of foundation beneath them. Their smiles were painted on their words of loyalty, empty rehearsals, their unity a rented stage they never truly owned. Now stripped of the act, they don't even recognize each other. Suspicion replaces closeness, irritation replaces laughter, and betrayal replaces trust. The very thing they pretended to be, a team, has been revealed as the opposite. Their performance only worked when you looked like an easy target. But once fate made you untouchable, the audience could see the truth. The actors were stumbling, the stage was breaking, and the play was over. Their mask of unity didn't just slip, it shattered. And once a mask is broken, it can never be worn the same way again. Fifth, they mistook fate's patience for approval. They completely misinterpreted fate's patience. When you didn't react, when you didn't fight back, when you didn't expose them immediately, they took that stillness as a green light. They assumed that because nothing struck them down in the moment, their actions were being overlooked or even condoned. In their arrogance, they mistook patience for weakness and silence for approval. But fate was never giving them approval. It was simply watching, recording, and letting them dig their own graves. That's the thing about divine justice, it doesn't rush. It allows time for people to reveal exactly who they are. And in that silence, they became bolder, more reckless, and more convinced that they were untouchable. Every time you chose not to retaliate, they saw it as proof of their victory. But what they couldn't see was that fate was taking notes. What they couldn't understand was that the delay wasn't absence. It was surveillance. When their plans kept collapsing, when every scheme backfired, it finally started to dawn on them that the silence was never in their favor. Instead, it was the rope they were given to hang themselves. The more they acted, the deeper they dug. And when the results never matched their expectations, paranoia set in. Now, instead of basking in their so-called victories, they're looking over their shoulders, questioning each other and wondering who's leaking information or sabotaging the group. They can't accept that the real reason for their failure isn't betrayal within, but protection from above. But pride won't let them see it that way, so they keep accusing, pointing fingers, and tearing each other apart. Each new failure drives them further into suspicion because they can't grasp that fate has placed a barrier they can't break. Their minds twist the truth into lies, convincing them that someone on the inside must be working against them. And that's where the collapse begins. By mistaking patience for approval, they set themselves up for their own downfall. Now the same silence that once emboldened them has become their torment. They can't sleep peacefully, they can't trust one another, and they can't escape the paranoia that grows with every failed plan. What they thought was freedom was actually surveillance. And what they thought was victory was nothing but the sound of fate setting them up for judgment. Sixth, fear is more contagious than loyalty. Fear spreads like wildfire, and once it infects a group, it doesn't take long before the whole foundation crumbles. At first, they moved with confidence, fueled by the belief that their unity gave them strength. As long as their scheme seemed to work, they felt untouchable. But the moment fate began blocking their plans, that confidence vanished, leaving fear in its place. And fear is far more contagious than loyalty ever will be. Loyalty requires trust, sacrifice, and belief in something greater than oneself. Fear, on the other hand, requires nothing but self-preservation. The second failure struck each person in that circle started thinking less about the group and more about their own survival. They began asking questions they wouldn't dare say aloud. What if I'm next? What if they throw me under the bus? What if someone exposes me first? Those quiet thoughts multiplied in every mind, spreading panic like wildfire. The irony is that the very thing they mocked you for, Your reliance on fate is now haunting them because they see that something bigger than them is thwarting their plans. And deep down, they know there's no strategy clever enough to beat fate. That realization doesn't inspire them to unite, it divides them. Fear makes them selfish. It makes them see each other not as allies, but as potential threats. And once fear takes hold, loyalty becomes fragile. What was once a united front starts to look more like a collection of individuals desperately trying to avoid exposure. Every failed plan feels like someone's fault, every mistake looks like sabotage, and every whispered rumor becomes a reason to turn on one another. Instead of asking how to succeed, their minds obsess over who will be the next to fall. This is why their circle cannot last. Loyalty is too weak to survive repeated failure, but fear thrives in it. And since fear spreads faster than any vow of allegiance, it only takes one or two to panic before the whole group is poisoned. Now the chain that once held them together is broken link by link, not because of an outside enemy, but because fear has convinced each of them that the real enemy might be sitting right beside them. 7th, negativity lacks patience when it's losing. Negativity only appears organized when it's winning. As long as their schemes seem to be working, alliances built on negativity can act patient, calculating, and disciplined. They'll wait, they'll plot, they'll pretend to play the long game. But that patience is nothing more than a mask-borrowed strength from the illusion of success. The moment fate blocks their path and keeps you untouched, the mask slips. What once looked like strategy unravels into desperation because negativity has no endurance when it starts losing. That's the key difference between good and negativity. Good can wait because it's rooted in truth, and truth doesn't expire. But negativity is fueled by appetite. It wants results immediately. It doesn't know how to build, it only knows how to consume. And when the consuming stops, the hunger grows unbearable. That's when chaos erupts. Suddenly they're no longer plotting with clarity, they're scrambling with panic. They move from careful whispers to reckless actions, from planned schemes to sloppy outbursts. Their inability to touch you forces their impatience to bleed out into the open. Impatience then turns their unity into conflict. When people only came together for wicked gain, patience is the first thing to die in the face of failure. They start blaming one another, pushing for faster results, and making reckless decisions that expose their true nature. Each one feels the clock ticking, each one feels their grip slipping. And instead of working together, they start clawing for control. The harmony they faked when they thought they were winning now collapses under the weight of frustration. This is why you're seeing their downfall happen so quickly. They don't know how to stand still and accept defeat. They don't know how to regroup with humility or wisdom. All they know is consumption. And when there's nothing left to consume, when fate has blocked every doorway, they turn inward, feeding on one another like starving wolves. The fact that you remain untouched is more than just protection, it's exposure. It reveals that their patience was never real, only a disguise. And now that the disguise has crumbled, their desperation is loud, their chaos is visible, and their downfall is unstoppable. Negativity can play games, but it cannot wait. And when patience runs out, destruction begins from within. 8th, your survival is a constant reminder of their failure. Your very survival has become their worst nightmare. Every day you wake up untouched, every time you rise stronger, every moment you continue to walk under divine protection, it chips away at them. Because for them, your destruction wasn't just a goal. It was supposed to be proof of their power. It was their way of validating their schemes, their envy, their bitterness. But since that destruction never came, every sunrise becomes another loud announcement of their failure. And failure is not something they know how to carry quietly. The longer you live untouched, the heavier that failure weighs on their backs. It's not just disappointment, it's humiliation. It's a constant reminder that their power, their numbers, their plotting all amounted to nothing. And the weight of that realization doesn't just sit still, it has to go somewhere. That's why they've turned on each other. Because when they can't unload their frustration on you, they unload it on whoever's standing closest. Blame becomes the new language of their conversations. Suspicion creeps into their minds like poison, and rage simmers beneath every interaction. They can't admit that fate blocked them because that would mean acknowledging a power greater than theirs. So instead, they twist the truth into something they can process. It must be someone else's fault. Someone didn't do their part. Someone leaked information. Someone wasn't loyal enough. Their minds can't handle the idea that you were divinely protected, so they invent human reasons for their failures. But those made-up reasons become ammunition for attacks against each other. What makes this even more tragic for them is that their failure is ongoing, not a one-time event. It repeats daily. Every morning they see you still standing, still breathing, still moving forward is another confirmation of their loss. And because the confirmation keeps coming, the tension inside their circle keeps rising. They can't escape it. Their loss follows them into conversations, into sleep, into every new plan that's doomed to collapse before it even begins. So now, instead of celebrating your downfall, they live trapped in the constant echo of their own failure, and the louder that echo gets, the more violently they turn against each other. Your survival isn't just your victory. It's their torment, day after day, moment after moment, until they finally devour themselves. 9th, the circle they formed became their cage. The very circle they formed with the intention of trapping you has now become their prison. They thought they were being clever by keeping everything hidden, swearing secrecy, and building an alliance that no outsider could penetrate. In their minds, secrecy was power. But what they didn't realize is that secrecy is also confinement. By agreeing to keep their deeds in the dark, they locked themselves inside a cage with no way out. And now that cage is closing in on them. Every plan they made, every lie they told, every betrayal they carried out is something they cannot confess to anyone outside their circle. They can't go to family for comfort, they can't turn to outsiders for help, and they can't admit the truth without exposing themselves. That silence they swore to protect has now become a trap. The only people they can argue with, accuse, or lash out at are the very ones they once called allies. This is the danger of alliances built on negativity. They demand loyalty to secrecy, but secrecy only breeds paranoia. The more their plans fail, the more suspicious they become of one another. They can't vent to anyone else, so they pour their anger into the only safe targets they have, each other. And because none of them are trustworthy, every word spoken in that circle is laced with doubt. Every conversation feels like a risk, every agreement feels like a lie, and every glance carries the question, are you the one who's going to betray me? Instead of being a place of strength, their circle is now suffocating them. What was once their weapon has become their punishment. The same secrecy that made them bold now makes them fearful because exposure would destroy them all. They are chained to each other by their own silence, forced to carry the burden of their negativity together, but without trust or true loyalty to ease the weight. And that's the irony. They built the circle thinking it would be your cage, but fate flipped it around. You're free, protected, moving forward while they're trapped in a prison of their own making. They can't leave, they can't confess, they can't escape. All they can do is tear into each other until the cage they built finally collapses on them. 10th. Heaven's blockade made their demons restless. You were meant to be their outlet, the safe target, the one they could drain, mock, and destroy without consequence. That was the role they assigned you in their twisted narrative. As long as they had access to you, they had somewhere to pour their venom, somewhere to release the weight of their own negativity. But fate stepped in and shut the door. The access they once depended on was blocked, and suddenly their demons had nowhere to go. What once flowed outward is now turning inward, and without you to feed on, they've started consuming each other. This is the truth about those who operate from a place of negativity. They always need a host. They survive by attaching themselves to someone else's energy, peace, or light. You were that host for a time, but fate's protection cut off the supply, and now the demons that drove them don't simply vanish, they demand release. That demand doesn't disappear, it redirects. And because they can't reach you anymore, the only place left for their demons to strike is within their own circle. That's why you're seeing them unravel so quickly. Rage doesn't just sit quietly, it looks for a body to inhabit, a mind to corrupt, a relationship to destroy. When you were the outlet, they could mask their dysfunction by pointing everything at you. But now that you're untouchable, they're forced to turn their claws inward. The resentment that was once aimed your way has become resentment toward each other. The criticism, the gossip, the betrayal, it's no longer about you. It's about who's closest to them in the moment, and here's the devastating irony. The same energy they once united to direct at you is now the very force tearing their group apart. Fate didn't just protect you, it redirected their negativity back into their own camp. Their demons have no choice but to turn cannibal, devouring friendships, breaking bonds, and exposing just how hollow their unity always was. This is why their downfall feels so rapid. It isn't random. It's the natural consequence of fate's blockade. They built their survival on draining others, and now that you're no longer available, their hunger is eating them alive. They thought they could feed on your soul forever, but fate closed the buffet, and in the absence of your destruction, the only meal left is each other. 11th, they're forced to see who they really are without you. They built their whole identity around your downfall. Everything they did, every whisper, every scheme was tied to the idea of seeing you broken. In their minds, your failure was their success, your destruction was their validation. But when fate refused to let you fall, Something devastating happened. They were left with nothing to define themselves by. Stripped of that illusion, they're being forced to see who they really are without you, and that's the cruel truth they never prepared for. Without you as a target, they have no sense of purpose. They can't measure themselves by your struggles anymore because you're still standing. They can't feel superior by comparing themselves to your pain because you've outlasted it. And without that borrowed identity, what's left? Emptiness, silence, a void that exposes how little substance they actually had all along. When people dislike you more than they love themselves, they live on borrowed energy. Their motivation isn't built from self-growth, passion, or vision. It's built from resentment. The danger with resentment is that it doesn't create, it only destroys. Once fate removed their access to you, they were forced to confront the emptiness they've been running from, but instead of facing it with humility, they implode. The negativity that once gave them direction now turns against them, eating them alive from the inside out. That's why their relationships are collapsing, why they're restless, suspicious, and chaotic. They're not just mad at you, they're mad at themselves for needing you as their definition in the first place. Your survival has revealed their lack of self, and nothing terrifies people more than having to face the mirror when they've built their life on falsehood. So now, while you walk free and whole, they are stuck wrestling with a reality they can't escape. You were never the problem, their emptiness was always the problem. But as long as they had you to target, they could avoid that truth. Now that fate has made you untouchable, avoidance is no longer an option. They're staring at their own hollowness, and it's breaking them apart. They thought destroying you would give them meaning, but your survival has only exposed their lack of it. And that exposure is the beginning of their implosion. 12th, the more they plot, the more they expose themselves. The more they plot, the more vulnerable they become. Every scheme they hatch, every whispered plan they think is secret, every calculated lie, all boomerang back into exposure. It's not just that their plans fail, it's that their very attempts become evidence against them. Fate has designed it so that the act of plotting itself becomes their undoing. Instead of destroying you, their schemes are slowly destroying the image they tried so hard to protect. Whispers don't stay whispers for long. Someone always repeats them, intentionally or not, and in that repetition, cracks appear. Lies don't hold together under pressure. They contradict one another until confusion exposes the truth. Alliances built on deceit don't age well either. They fracture when everyone starts realizing just how untrustworthy the others really are. All of this happens because fate has blocked their intended outcome. With you untouchable, the energy of their plotting doesn't vanish. It ricochets back into their own camp, creating chaos. That's the irony they never saw coming. They thought plotting in the dark made them powerful, but the darkness is now their downfall. Each secret meeting leaves behind suspicion. Each failed plan raises new questions, and each lie that doesn't line up becomes a seed of doubt. Slowly but surely, they expose themselves without you lifting a finger. Your silence isn't weakness, it's strategy from above. By not being touched, you force them into a position where they reveal their own corruption. This is the dangerous beauty of divine protection. Your enemies end up becoming their own witnesses. They do the talking, they create the evidence, and they unravel their own story. While they scramble to figure out why nothing is working, they're really just digging deeper into exposure. Every time they regroup, another truth slips out. Every time they try again, another fracture forms in their circle. The truth is, their schemes were never sustainable. Negativity doesn't know how to hold itself together when it keeps failing. So the more they try to come against you, the more fate turns their plotting into mirrors that reflect every lie, every betrayal, and every hidden agenda back at each other. They wanted you to be uncovered, but in the end, they're the ones stripped bare. Their exposure is not accidental, it's divine design. 13th, they thought you were the weak link, but they were. They always believed you were the weak link. In their minds, it was impossible for one person to stand against their numbers, their whispers, and their schemes. They looked at your isolation, your silence, or even your struggles and mistook them for weakness. They convinced themselves that all it would take was pressure from every side, and you would finally snap. But fate flipped the script and proved them wrong. What they thought was fragility was actually strength, and what they believed was power in numbers was nothing but insecurity in disguise. The truth is, needing a crowd to attack one person is already proof of weakness. It takes no strength to hide behind numbers, no courage to fight as a mob. If you were truly weak, they wouldn't have needed each other. They wouldn't have needed to plot, gather, or strategize. The fact that they banded together to take you down revealed something they didn't want to admit. You were stronger than all of them put together, and now the proof is undeniable. You are still standing untouched while they are unraveling. The weak links have been revealed, and it isn't you, it's them. It's the alliances that required multiple hands just to fail. It's the friendships that only existed because of their shared dislike for you. It's the people who claim to be powerful but couldn't last without leaning on each other like crutches. Fate has exposed that you were never the fragile one. They were. This is why their downfall stings so badly. They underestimated the power of one soul protected by fate while overestimating the strength of their alliance. They thought majority ruled, but fate showed them that truth doesn't need numbers to stand firm. They thought you were easy prey, but the very attempt to make you their target revealed their own desperation. Now every time they look at you, they see living proof of their miscalculation. You weren't the weak link, you were the anchor, and their so-called unity wasn't strength, it was a chain of weakness waiting to snap. The alliances that once scorned you have been exposed as fragile, temporary, and hollow. They underestimated you, but in doing so, they exposed themselves as the weakest of all. 14th, their division is the judgment you'll never have to speak. Their division isn't random, it's the judgment they earned, and it came without you lifting a finger. You don't have to fight to prove yourself, you don't have to gather evidence, and you don't even have to defend your name. Fate handled that work. The very thing they feared most, exposure, is now happening from within their own camp. Their whispers are slipping through the cracks, their accusations are being hurled at each other, and their unity has shattered into fragments. That collapse is the verdict stamped and sealed by fate itself. What makes it sting even more for them is that you never had to retaliate. They expected you to retaliate, to try to clap back, to enter into the chaos and wrestle with their lies. Instead, you remained still and fate used their own hands to bring them down. The silence they mistook for weakness has now become their greatest torment because it forced them to face consequences without you ever having to fight back. Your absence on the battlefield is what makes the judgment so heavy they can't even blame you. Their betrayal of each other is the evidence. Every argument, every accusation, every broken trust is fate saying loud and clear, guilty. The punishment isn't just in being exposed to the world, it's in having to live with the fallout of turning against the very people they thought they could trust. It's in realizing that the same alliances they bragged about are now tearing them apart piece by piece. They wanted to see you judged, but judgment came for them instead. And it came in a way they can't escape, through each other. The beauty of this judgment is that it leaves you free. Free from defending your name, free from trying to convince people of your truth, free from the exhausting need to retaliate. While they unravel, you rise untouched. While they fight to survive in the ruins of their alliances, you walk in peace, knowing you never had to soil your hands. Fate wrote the final word. Their division is the judgment. Their collapse is the sentence, and their betrayal of each other is the undeniable evidence. The truth is, undeniable. Fate never just protected you, it exposed them. What was once hidden behind masks of unity, secrecy, and strength has been stripped bare, and now they're devouring one another because they can't devour you. Every scheme became their own undoing, every silence from above was surveillance, and every attempt to break you only revealed who was really weak. They wanted your destruction to be their proof of power, but your survival became their sentence, and here's the divine irony. Your greatest defense wasn't retaliation, it was preservation. While you stood still, fate went to war on your behalf. That's why their circle collapsed, their patience vanished, and their so-called alliances transformed into cages they can't escape. What they once used to define themselves, the plot against you, has now left them exposed, restless, paranoid, and fractured. This is not just judgment, it's the fulfillment of a higher law. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, not because weapons won't be formed, but because they will always backfire, and in the ashes of their schemes one truth remains. Your untouched survival is the loudest testimony of all. So stand tall, resilient one. You don't need to prove anything, you don't need to lift a finger, and you don't need to chase validation. Their collapse is the proof, their division is the judgment, and their betrayal of each other is the undeniable evidence that fate's hand has been on you all along. You were never the weak link, they were, and now the world sees it. If this message resonates with you, let's connect deeper. I share regular insights that will help you navigate this life with strength and clarity. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss it. Take a moment to like this. This shows that you resonate with this and can help the algorithm reach others with this message. Lastly, please share your thoughts below. Have you experienced something similar? How have you overcome these forces? Your experience can be the key for someone else to stand firm. Share this with someone who could use this reminder of their power. Together, let's empower each other to walk in truth, in truth, in truth, in truth, in truth, in truth.